And one of the interesting things, I think, we talk about stereotypes of race, stereotypes of age, stereotypes of what are others? There's the big
gender.
There's big
right?
ones, right? That we talk about, and those, and we should talk
Class.
about those things. Class. Yes, you're right. In the workplace, but in the workplace specifically, I found it interesting that we never talk about attractiveness, and it seems like it's the ugly child in that one. And the funny thing is, what people perceive as good looking or attractive is one of the biggest biases that we have actually in the workplace. It's giant because it's so subconscious that we can't even, like, you see someone who's a different race in front of you, that's apparent to most of you, or someone looks different from you. But when it comes to attractiveness, now, of course, you might say, hey, this person's attractive, consciously. But there's also a huge a component of the subconscious, and it really does affect the way people make decisions about you. And Dan, you and I were talking yesterday. I found that research that in higher ed, and I also found a very similar research in not just higher ed, but also in the banking industry, that people who were deemed to be more attractive, and these were studies, and for example, the banking industry, they took about 250 people, judged whether they were and had them be ranked, judged whether they were attracted on a ranking scale, and then watched their performance over a 15-year period. To people's horror who are watching this episode, who probably already kind of know this to some degree, the people who are deemed more attractive, first off, found themselves in higher quality PhD or schools. That was a fact. I mean, like huge difference in it. The second thing, after they got out of school, they found themselves in better and higher paying jobs right out of school. They also saw them progress higher and faster and farther in those careers than those who were deemed less attractive on aggregate. And something that was really interesting that they said, people who were deemed more attractive, their papers were cited more than the people who are less attractive. And that was a weird one to them because, like, what's the relationship? And the only thing they could come up with is either correlation is not causation, there's just pure correlation there, or if there's a causal effect, because they'll present their papers in public and then people get to see their faces when they do present their papers, then they get to see.
That could be.
So
that's a possible explanation. I think
specious.
it probably has more to access than anything else, that your attractiveness gives you more access. And there could be also a lot of other, just hearing you talk about the study, I could see a lot of other variables, right, that might be at play, like health, access to a nutritious diet, things like that. Because if you come from a place of poverty and generational poverty, you're not going to have as much access to nutritious food. That's going to impact your appearance. There's only so much genes can do, right? Even if you have a great set of genes. So environmental factors may also be playing a factor in that as well.
Making you whether you're more attractive or not attractive. True. I mean, that's
right.
But it's still not disqualifying the notions, but it's saying that people who are deemed more attractive are not attractive. And that's a scary thing. So you're saying if you're underprivileged, you're going to then be less attractive, making them people. It's a signal to people. I'm
not saying that necessarily. I'm just trying to look at all the different variables that could be.
No, I think
there.
I'm agreeing with some of your thesis. I think it's an interesting play, and Malcolm Gladwell kind of played with this stuff a little bit in his book Blink, right? And I can't remember his exact stuff around that, although he did talk about that gentleman who was killed by the police. That black gentleman was killed by police in his book, which I guess isn't necessarily pertinent to this. But what I do find interesting is there's a lot of research that physically attractive students do typically obtain higher grades at universities, partially because they are deemed more conscientious, intelligent. And there's another research I looked at where they looked at that in the workplace, and people did deem people who are more attractive to be more conscientious and intelligent. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think this is one of those unspoken biases that definitely exists, right? Like the attractiveness bias. And as far as attractiveness being arbitrary, you could make that argument. There are some studies that show that symmetry of facial features is a characteristic across cultures around attractiveness, right?
Yeah.
And so you can get down to what is attractive scientifically. And I would say that once again, that symmetry can also be impacted by environmental factors like access to nutrient foods and certain types of more relaxing environments. If you're always on the hustle because you're on the streets trying to make ends meet, you know, that could have a long-term impact on your appearance as well, you know, kind of roughing you up a little bit. So yeah, no, but I will also say, as a counterpoint, in my experience, I've also seen where attractiveness can also be a detriment, right? And I think women would also probably concur with this, and the detriment for them is that the perception that they're getting special treatment or they're allowed to advance because of their appearance rather than their actual skills. I think they'd push back against that, right? And I think among female employees that might become an issue. And the other one is, I have a friend, and I'm not going to go into names. It's an old friend from a long time ago, incredibly attractive guy. I mean, women would just throw themselves at his feet. And I would see it. He'd get opportunities, not just dating opportunities, but work opportunities, educational opportunities. He'd get a lot of opportunities thrown open to him. And a super nice guy, super intelligent, but I always had the suspicion that because all the stuff became so easy for him, he never had to really work at stuff when he was younger, right? And there were other factors too, but he ended up not doing so well long-term in life because of that, right? And so sometimes when you have those benefits, right, like the privilege of having good genes and attractive features, and it can also have a negative impact on you too, because then you don't have to hustle quite as hard as somebody who's of average looking, or somebody who might be as unattractive, who might have to work a little bit harder to attain the same opportunities that an attractive person gets with a little more ease.
Yeah, no, I think there's actually a lot of looks plays a big part in a lot of people's biases, you know, and I think there's even the, hey, this person's good looking, and probably isn't smart bias, you know. I was actually surprised with the bias towards attractiveness, because I was growing up, you know, if you were attractive, you were that attractive beefcake, you were brain dead, you know, you had to be kind of unattractive, you were the geek, the unattractive person who was smart. So I was kind of surprised by the results of the research. But I do think it can go both ways. But the research says statistically it tends to go the other direction. Numbers suggest typically the other direction. And it's important for us to think about perception in the workplace, because it really matters about performance, how people perceive the world they're in. You know, if I think of myself as an unattractive person, and some mornings, or most mornings I probably do, if I think of myself as an unattractive person, and I feel like I'm being wrongfully overlooked due to that, I'm going to start thinking bad thoughts about the company. I'm not going to be performing well. So it's super important, I think, as leaders and as fellow teammates, to understand the environment that you've created, or that's
and I think it's also important. You know, I have a policy: I never make any comments about people's appearance.
Let me ask you that, because I was in a meeting yesterday and someone made a comment, a fellow female made a comment about another female's hair, and I was the only other one in the room. And after that was said,
won't do it.
After I did it, I said, hey, yeah, your hair looks great.
Shouldn't do it.
But after I did it, I was like, and we're friends, you know, so I knew it was going to be okay. But I thought, would I do that normally? You know?
If you're watching, people, don't do this. Don't do what Jodah did. If you're a guy, just keep your mouth shut.
I would agree. I'm just what I'm saying. You know, it's an interesting dynamic that plays out there. You know, that's, again, there are gender specific behaviors that can be adopted.
And it's not just in gender. I'm thinking about a particular story where it was a senior administrator who came up to me and asked, "Hey, Dan, you looks like you lost a little bit of weight there." And I was just like, what are you thinking about me? Is that what you're looking at, my weight? No, I kind of told him, no, I just got clothes that fit. That's what I told him.
I don't know, Dan. That sounds really sensitive. See,
I just thought, like, if you're a senior executive coming up to me and commenting on my weight,
yeah.
that's inappropriate.
Yeah,
and I think, and I work with a lot of female employees. I will never.
But anyway, let's
even if they
pause there for a
compliment each
second.
other.
Is it inappropriate because it's supposed to be inappropriate, or is it actually a power dynamic inappropriateness?
It's power dynamic inappropriateness.
All right, I'm just wondering, I mean, because I know we've superimposed
And I
a
think
lot
there
of
are also
appropriateness.
cultural things too, right? But I think, especially as a male in the workplace, and especially if you're a male supervisor in a workplace and you have some semblance of power, a perception of power, you should not be commenting on what anybody looks like. Even if you think, oh, that's a nice outfit. Don't say it.
I would agree. I would agree.
Because you don't even know what Pandora's box that could potentially open up.
Yeah,
right?
Not even Pandora's box. See, I wouldn't even talk about that. I think it sets a position where, like you said, you're like, how are you judging me? I want to be judged. I'm in a workplace, so I should be perceived as the value I'm providing for this company.
Right.
So it's not. I'm not even talking about because there shouldn't be. You should have not gone to HR for what he did, and you didn't. It would be ridiculous.
No, I would not do that.
But I thought he was a dick. He did create a perception for you, though, that you took away with you, that you were now carrying with you. And that's where the failure occurred.
I was like, oh, so this guy's just sitting around judging me at my based on my weight when I'm at meetings.
And what does that mean to him? Why is weight even right? Exactly. So
right, why is my weight important to you?
And
why are you concerned with whether I'm? Are you concerned about my health?
Right. What if you were friends though? You actually saw each other outside of work as well, and then in office he said that to you after not seeing you for 2 weeks.
That would be a different dynamic for sure.
So it's always contingent. There's always something. It's no cut and dry thing. Even then,
I would say even then though, in the workplace setting, I would not say anything.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. You don't do it. Just you just keep it professional. I'll say this. Back in the day, I met all my, I'll say girlfriends. Which a couple that I had in the past at work. That wouldn't happen anymore for me. That I would have. It was almost impossible because I would not make any references. If I found someone attractive, I'd make a point not to care about it and not make any. I just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah, no. I think. Well, I've been married for a long time, as you know, and so I haven't been on the dating scene. But if something were to happen, and I would never date at work.
Yeah,
I think that's perilous. I know people have done it, but I think in the environment
that happens all the time. But in today's world, man, it's too fraught with danger. I wouldn't do it.
Listen to more of the Sense and Signal Leadership and Sense Making podcast.